To start, I am currently in custody of my two little sisters, Amy, who is 17, and Liza, who is 8, not their real names for obvious reasons. I am a 29-year-old male, and we live in Australia. I would like to warn anyone who has faced abuse in the past, as parts of this story may be triggering. To anyone who has faced abuse, I deeply empathize with you. The main part of this takes place about a year ago. I had moved out 6 years prior and relocated to another state for work and study. I was honestly quite slack in keeping in contact with my family, which is probably why this went on for so long. When I think back to the time before I moved out, I realize I didn't treat Amy very well. If I hadn't moved out and had so little contact with my family, I might have turned out just as entitled and as much of a horrible person. I came back to visit for a grandparent's birthday. After spending so long away, I spent the morning catching up with aunts, uncles, cousins, my parents, and of course, Liza. This was actually the first time I really noticed the oddities of my family. Perhaps it was the change in environment. A few of my roommates had little sisters and whatnot, but it was the first time I noticed how quiet the little girls in my family were. I had always thought of Amy as shy and quiet, but my little cousins were the same, polite, shy, quiet, and obedient. At the time, I brushed this off. After a few hours, I realized that Amy had been nowhere to be seen all day. Since the party was at my parents' house, this confused me. I slipped inside to see if she was cooped up in her room like a lot of 16-year-olds would be, talking to friends or doing assessments. What I found is a memory that will haunt me forever. My oldest uncle on my father's side, laying over my sister who was quite clearly in a lot of pain and struggling not to cry as he pinned her beneath him. I completely lost it as any brother would, shouting at him to get off her and out of her room. I scared the hell out of both of them, but in that moment, I was honestly ready to remove my uncle from this world. Amy was pretty messed up in the head when I tried consoling her. She was covered in scars and had a rash that I later found out was an allergic reaction. For context, she was allergic to strawberries. She didn't speak and looked at me as if she expected me to hurt her too. Her room was dimly lit, the blinds taped close to the wall. All the things she'd had when I left were gone, leaving her bedroom feeling cold and empty. To add insult to injury, she was a month pregnant. When I demanded an explanation from my parents, they, paraphrasing, said that it was my uncle's right, and my father simply pointed out one of my 11-year-old cousins sitting quietly with her parents and told me to have fun. I stormed off back to Amy's room, quietly packed her a bag of necessities, and managed to sneak her out of the house and into my car before doing the same with Liza. Part of me wanted to get all my cousins out too, but my main focus was on Amy right now, who sat trembling in the back of my car. I drove them both to the closest police station to report what was happening. I'll skip most of the details of the legal battle that ensued, but my family did not take kindly to being outed for what they were doing. It was a tradition that spanned generations, and there shouldn't be anything wrong with tradition. Amy and Liza were put into temporary foster care. Amy was a wreck. To her, everyone could and would hurt her, and I got reports every few hours that she was having a panic attack. 3 of my uncles went to jail for a very long time. I got a fair bit of money from a range of family members, full custody of both Amy and Liza, no enforced visitation with their parents, and my parents had to pay for any therapy costs, medication, and medical needs for both of them. My family was torn in two by this. Many of my aunts left their husbands with their children after finally having the courage to follow me. Uncles who had married into the family took their wives, who had also been abused, and cut off ties. I still keep in contact with these members of my family, and I'm grateful for their support and glad that my cousins are safer now. Even some of the older guys who had been brought up thinking it was okay to treat women that way took themselves into counseling once they realized just how messed up it was. I've had more than one instance where they admitted to hurting Amy and apologized, which I've accepted, as these cousins did their best to take their siblings or other cousins out of harmful environments. Now I do believe some part of the ruling protected the younger men of the family, provided they see some form of mental health professional, as they grew up thinking that this was all normal. So, they didn't end up in jail but did end up on some list of possible intimate offenders. I'm not entirely sure there. No one is sure who fathered Amy's child, but she had her pregnancy terminated as we were told her physical and mental health would not cope with carrying a baby she ultimately would be unlikely to care for. She did consent at the time, and it was brought up by her psychologist once she was doing better, and she confirmed that she would have no love for the baby due to the circumstances in which she fell pregnant. For 6 years, Amy had been physically, intimately, and emotionally abused in every way conceivable. This abuse mostly came from my father's 4 brothers and brother-in-law who married into the family. My parents both stood by and let this happen, offering no support for Amy. During the case, my uncles argued that it was their birthright, being born into the family, and that it was simply Amy's rite of passage before she was married off to one of my uncle's friends at 18. They used her allergy as a form of torture and manipulation, wanting her to be silent and obedient. They would press strawberries against her skin any time she said a word and force her to eat them when she stepped too far out of line. Many of my aunts from my father's side admitted to enduring this treatment too, although most of them were lucky and didn't have allergies to exploit. I honestly can't even begin to explain everything that was wrong with Amy because of her behavior. Liza, for the most part, was okay. She needed a little therapy as she was being groomed into compliance and taught that what she would experience was normal. However, Amy had completely shut down, and it took 2 months before I could even get her to speak. She trusts me now, and we often sit down, and I let her talk and open up about whatever she feels comfortable with. Her stories often have me struggling to hold back tears while I comfort her. I did get Amy a service dog a few months ago, tailored to the emotional support she needs on a regular basis. Lickety Split is honestly the best of dogs. She knows exactly when she's needed and is a massive help when it comes to calming Amy's anxiety, especially in public. We've had more than one encounter with unrelated entitled parents thinking they or their kid deserves her dog more than her. Anyone who does think that can honestly fight me. No one deserves her dog more than her. On one occasion, one of my aunts, whose husband went to jail, tried taking lickety-split because their money paid for her. I told her if she ever came near my property again, I would call the police as there was a restraining order against her concerning both my sisters. Later, she came back and tried to poison lickety-split with tainted meat, but one of my lovely neighbors caught her and chased her off. The police were called, and she is now in jail too, after having to pay a fine and some money to me because at this point, I'm pretty well acquainted with the legal system and sued her. My family still tried to get my sisters out of my care, reporting me for everything from animal abuse to illicit substance trafficking. They even planted illicit substances in an identical stuffed toy to Amy's comfort toy and left it in the yard, but Amy would never do that, so I knew something was up immediately and checked our home security. I've actually become pretty chummy with the local police officers who have to inspect their claims, but they know I'd never do anything to endanger my custody of the girls. They mean the world to me. I will admit, though, I have done things to hurt my bond with them, yelling when stressed and throwing things from time to time. I'm not perfect. Amy has told me that although these moments do scare her, she doesn't feel endangered being near me when they happen. Now, the reason this ended up here is that a few weeks ago, my mother contacted me saying she wanted to talk. I was hesitant but agreed, and we met up in the next town over. My mother explained how she was in the process of divorcing my father, and she wanted to have a relationship with me and my sisters, with an emphasis on mending her bond with Amy, who had not called her mom in years. She explained how she was pressured into the marriage after she got pregnant with me and never wanted that life for her daughters. I flat out told her no, something several members of my family disagreed with, as she could have done literally anything to support Amy emotionally with what was happening, anything to make her feel better or more secure. Instead, Amy was shunned and isolated except for when she was needed to cook, clean, or provide some sort of service to the family, even going as far as to berate her whenever she did try to confide in my mom that she was in pain or scared. Amy was well past her breaking point when I took her, and had even planned on offing herself less than a week after my visit. My mother argued that she had the same right as the other members of my family who had left and had contact with my sisters, but I told her it was because they were doing it to protect their children and themselves. They didn't wait a year after losing custody to try and fight for them, and I really don't even need to give a reason. I have custody, and she does not. Members of the community convinced me that when Amy is in a better place mentally and Liza is older, I should bring it up with them and leave the decision in their hands. I've been told Amy will be dependent on me well after she turns 18, her mind just doesn't function properly. Therefore, there is no risk of her mother getting in contact behind my back even when she's an adult. While Amy does have a phone and a computer, she doesn't have any social media as she doesn't want any chance of her family trying to contact her, especially since they've threatened her with many forms of torture in the past. This story doesn't have a slam dunk ending. I have my sisters, and they're in a safe environment where they'll get to grow up as kids. Amy is getting the help she needs and is slowly making her way out of the tower she built to protect herself in the only way she could. She knows there isn't a rush to come out. I'll work with her at the pace she sets. She's still discovering her own interests but quite likes just reading a book with a form of fruity tea. She also has a small collection of stuffed animals that she adores and takes one with her everywhere. She is sensitive to texture, so the feeling is a comfort for her. Honestly, I've loved helping Amy discover herself. She lost a lot of her ability to think and feel for herself during this time, and watching her find her favorite book genre or her favorite types of music is a great feeling, knowing how far she's come. I live for the days she actually manages a smile. I'd be willing to answer most questions, so if you want to know anything, just ask. I want to bring awareness that these things are still happening to other kids, but obviously, some things I'd rather keep to myself for the girls' sake. Update 1. Sorry I disappeared on everyone. Things got super busy over Christmas and the past few months in general. I haven't even logged onto Reddit in a while. The thought came to me the other day, so I thought I'd give everyone curious enough to follow an update on myself and the girls. First off, it's been about a year now, and we're all doing great. Amy's therapy has been going well, and she's becoming more comfortable in social settings. She still has selective mutism, but it's been improving. She's now officially a completely healthy kid in physical terms, having completed the last of her medical procedures and physio at the end of January. She had a lot of issues with her bones initially as well as being malnourished, but that's all fixed now. She's showing a lot more emotion and actively seeks out and shows affection towards those she trusts. She has far fewer nightmares than she did a few months ago. Amy still needs regular therapy, but her therapist has been praising her progress. Her schoolwork has also been going well. I've had a few people ask how Amy keeps up, and to put it simply, she doesn't. Amy's main focus at school is to learn to socialize. There is no pressure for her to keep up grades or do well in tests. That stuff can be worked on later, and even her teachers give her easier work despite already being 2 years below her age-appropriate year. Liza is doing well in school too. She seems to have taken after me since she is very smart and near the top of her grade. I'm very proud. Since my last update here, I've sat down with her and gone a bit more into detail about what was happening when she was with her parents, as she started requesting to see them again. If it were up to me, that would never ever happen. It's her right to make a choice once she's old enough. I'll slowly tell her more about what was happening, and not until she has the whole story will I let her choose if she wants to have supervised visits with her parents. I've finished my studies for my field of work and got promoted pretty quickly once qualified, which allows me to work at home more often and spend more time with my girls. For those who ask, yes, I do call them my girls. Why wouldn't I? I've also fixed a lot of my anger issues, and it's been quite a while since my last outburst. Some people I saw were concerned about that. We also moved towards the end of September. The girls still go to the same school, and our new house has a bigger backyard, which Lickety Split loves. She's doing very well too. That's about all the important information I can think of right now. Thank you everyone for the support.